Welcome back to 20 Side Adventures. My name's Ryan. This is the first video I've ever done like this. This is going to be a reaction video. So if you haven't seen already, go watch the original video from Swingripper. It's actually two videos. It's concerning free archetype. And there's just a lot of stuff mentioned in it that I really wanted to respond to and take a different perspective on. So I hope you guys appreciate the content and the differing opinions. While I'm not one to ever say there's really a wrong way to play tabletop RPGs, with a few exceptions, I think there's a couple things you can do that are just really destroying to the concept itself. But for the most part, if you're having fun at your table and you're playing the way that your table wants to play, and you're having a great time with your friends, that's the right way to play a TTRPG. That being said, in a broader concept, there's some philosophies and things that I really take to heart as a GM, and I think create a great playing environment. And I think some of that's lost on Swingripper's take on free archetype and what it brings to the table. So I wanted to give another perspective and challenge some of his assertions. So again, please go watch his videos. Give him a like, a subscribe if you're not familiar with him. Very in-depth analytical content, great channel. And me as just a small voice here in the wilderness of Pathfinder 2e YouTubing community. If you like my perspective and what I bring and can offer you guys to help improve your tables, please give me a like and subscribe. And with that, let's get into it.
A lot of people in the Pathfinder 2e space see the free archetype rule as a given at most tables.
I kind of agree with this. I think we could be a little bit more discerning about it. It can be overwhelming, I think, for new players because there are so many archetypes. But I think it creates a better play environment because Pathfinder, for me at least, coming from first edition, was all about the options, having so many things that you could pick from and do and create. And this also kind of builds into a larger gaming philosophy for me where the rules of the game are the physics of the world, right? So having those archetypes, that extra training, that nuance is all about how the world integrates with itself. So I don't see the rules as something separate from the role play and the world building and all the other things that come into a TTRPG game.
And they usually play with an unrestricted free archetype where you can basically pick whatever you want from the extra feats that you are given. And I think that actually poses a bigger balance concern than a lot of people will often say if you have players that are min-maxers. And I want to show you some of the things that you can.
So min-maxing is always kind of a problem in my opinion, but there is something that comes with min-maxing. You minimize something and you maximize something else. So you're creating inherently imbalanced characters, and that's okay. One of my favorite characters was a Arcanist that I dumped their strength to like 7 back in Pathfinder 1 and just had intelligence through the roof and maxed out a lot of their casting. But when there was any physical challenge in the group, nearly impossible. I also had a ton of fun of he just wouldn't do anything physical. Opening doors, unheard of. Carrying something, why would I ever do such a thing? It was a lot of fun.
Can do with free archetype that you would really not want people doing, so that way you can know what to pick on your own free archetype characters, and also maybe think twice before taking it as a given in your next game.
So I don't think that's a reason to not take it as a given. Also, it's a weird concept to me of things you wouldn't want people doing. If it's in the game and it's part of the rules and it's approved by Paizo, then go ahead and do it. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm going to skip ahead a couple points to get to some of the finer points.
So first, let's just get on the same page for what free archetype does. Free archetype just gives an extra class feat every even level that can only be spent on a feat that has the archetype trait.
So I'm going to nitpick here. It's not any class feat. It's specific feats from your archetype, which usually have 2, maybe 3 choices with a few exceptions. So it is a very limited and niche direction you're going. You can't load in your main character's feats. If you're taking a multi-class dedication, you're several levels behind being able to pick entire class feats. So uh, it's not quite as powerful as it's being made out to be here.
And there are many, many archetypes in this game. I'm just gonna like start scrolling through pretty quickly.
And that is the coolest thing. I actually did not switch over to second edition because there were no archetypes coming from first edition. The complete lack of all of those choices and features not being present in 2e is why it took me so long to switch over to 2e. All right, jumping ahead, like I said.
You might say, it's a multi-class dedication. How bad can it really be? Well, if you meet the stat prerequisites, which is not that hard, these 14s, by the way, are +2s. None of the archetypes have actually been moved to remaster rules because there weren't really dedications in the first book of Player Core 1. They didn't print a lot of them, so a lot of archetypes are just going to be legacy content. Don't worry about that. A lot of them are getting reprinted in Player Core 2, including Wrestler, which is on my list of things to talk about. So, what makes champion dedication so great? Or champion archetype in general? Because let me tell you, it's not champion feats, that's for sure. Champion feats tend to not be that great until like the mid to late game. So what it does is it gives you armor training. And if you're something like a sorcerer, look, now you can play strength build and have armor. Oh.
Okay, +3 AC. Great. Why is your sorcerer taking a lot of physical damage? Like, if you are a caster, why are you in the front lines? Now, if you're building some armored mage knight, this sounds like a cool character concept where you can kind of do both. But also, if you want to be a mage knight, the Magus is probably better anyways.
And if you want to be in the front line with that armor, why don't you get some extra HP for your troubles? And the free archetype rule says, hey, if they're sacrificing class feats as well, you might want to cap the amount of HP they get from feats like Champion Resiliency, but you can, as a caster, get more HP, armor, and then Healing Touch, so you get out of combat healing plus an extra focus point. And then at level 6, get the Champion's Reaction.
Okay, so sure, you can get the healing, which is a focus spell, so you've got 2 or 3 of them. Yes, the paladin can take 10 minutes, regenerate. That's, in theory, infinite healing, but if you're actually tracking time in your games, which is really what the 10 minutes is meant for, how long can you really spend refocusing in the middle of a dungeon or whatever is going on in the story? These things don't happen in a vacuum. And extra hit points, so okay, you're getting 3 for each archetype. You get 1 every 2 levels. You're probably, in this scenario, I think a 6 HP for a sorcerer, so now you're up to 9. You're still not a full martial. You're wasting a feat to get it. You're going down an archetype path that maybe doesn't synergize really well with your caster type unless you're doing something kind of unique with it. Yeah, just some weird takes on that to me.
And for those of you that don't know what Champion's Reactions are, they are absurdly potent abilities. So I'm going to go into...
This I can agree with. I didn't realize this till a game a little bit ago. You get the resistance against each specific damage type that someone deals, and I had some big bad guy that dealt like 5 different dice types of damage, and each one of them took a -15, and I was like, oh, Champion is way tougher than I thought.
I'm going to go into Champion itself.
So I'm going to skip this part. Basically, the next part of this is you're giving your sorcerer a reaction to be able to defend your allies because most casters don't have great reactions. Okay, great, but again, why is your mage within 15 feet of the enemy and your friends? That just doesn't seem like what your caster should be doing. You're in a weird place, unless, like I said, you're building this mage knight character that's a melee caster, but then you're probably going Magus. And then also he brings up, what if the whole party takes this archetype? Okay, then your big bad guy's first hit, everyone piles on all of these damage reductions. Corrections from the editor's desks. All of these resistances would not stack on a single attack, so you can stack if 3 out of 4 people in the party have champion's reactions. Every round you get to put a damage resistance on the guy getting hit. okay, you're still going to dish out a pretty good amount of damage. It's not that huge of a number. It is strong. You're still going to deal damage, and no one else is going to be able to react to anything else going on in the combat. I was pretty focused on the next part of this argument being the thematic and story part of it. So you're still probably dishing out a fair bit of damage. It's strange to me. And here's the other part. Who are you a champion of? Are you all the same deity? Are you different deities? What does this do now that in the story you've all found this devotion to a deity at some later point in the game that is outside of your core character creation because archetypes come at level 2? Like, you didn't start your journey as an adventurer being a champion to this deity. What happened to make that happen? What ethos do you have to follow? What edicts do you now have to abide by as a character because you chose this holy or unholy path? All of these nuance and story aspects are taken out of this, which just ooh, this gives me the neatest ability. Which, if your table plays that way, fine. I just think you're really missing out, and a lot of these complaints are mitigated when you consider the story you're telling versus I just want to bolt together the coolest thing. We're going to jump to the psychic part of this video.
So let's talk about psychic, who can give you a bunch of extra damage. Because what they do in all of these words here is they give you an extra skill training, sure, and a special cantrip from the psychic class that's just like an upgrade version of a normal cantrip. And so it comes from the conscious mind subclasses because all the multi-class things are tied to the original class. A lot of people go here for tangible dream. And mind you, they have to pick one of these standard psych cantrips, but that is not why psychic is on this list. It is on this list because of imaginary weapon. And you go, okay, why are you hyping this thing up so much? And well, it's because of this amp ability here. If you spend a focus point while casting the imaginary weapon, you can make 2 imaginary weapon strikes. So it's 2 free strikes from this cantrip, which sure, it's an attack roll cantrip. How good can it be? No, it's a focus spell, so sure.
So it's just weird to me that both of those things are shrugged off, because like most casters, if you dip into psychic and you have an attack roll, it's not great against AC. And sure, it's just a focus point. You only can have at most 3 of them. So per fight, you're at best doing this 3 times. And at early levels, when you can take this, this is a one-shot hit to hopefully dish out a fair bit of damage. Like, those are both really big hurdles to making this something that's incredibly overpowered or broken.
Against a different target, sure. But both are at no multi-attack penalty. The only issue is, for every 2 levels you gain, the amount of damage this thing deals per strike goes up by 2d8s. So if you do the math on this, it gets very damaging very quickly.
This I agree with. Based to any other cantrip, I think the highest I found was D6s, and they don't scale at every level. It was every other level. So this definitely far outseeds other cantrips. So even just as a base unamped cantrip, it is going to be stronger than other cantrips you will have access to by dipping into psychic. This again, I come back to though the roleplay aspect. There is one subclass, one very specific conscious mind, and the story behind what your mind is doing as a psychic should be a pretty core part about your character. So again, why did you develop these psychic powers? Why does your conscious mind react in this way? What does that affect you suddenly developing these powers at a later date than just being what your character was all about from the beginning?
If you are level 9 and using imaginary weapon, you are dealing 10d8 per target. And
assuming you hit and you have the focus points to spend. Still pretty good though, like, don't get me wrong.
If you are something like a Magus, because Magus has a lot of things that synergize with attack roll spells, notably their ability titled Spell Strike.
I mean, I would just say it's like their core function. Like, I wouldn't play it off as like some side thing that a Magus does. This is, if you're playing a Magus because you want to hit people with a sword, that then explodes them with magic.
Which lets them use martial accuracy and put on a 2-action spell to then strike with it and deal the full damage of that spell plus the full damage of the strike. And then they can use stuff like the focus or the true actual spell, Sure Strike. I fumbled on my words a bit there, but you got the idea.
I know your pain, man. Happens a lot when making these videos. You're right. This is a pretty cool thing. You can cast Sure Strike, and then you would do your Spell Strike with the imaginary weapon. It would be a pretty good rotation if you dipped into Psychic. You will probably do more damage with that than any other cantrip you have access to.
But, that's only single target. And, like, how bad can it really be if it's a single target ability, you're losing one of the things off of it? So, like, really, it's a good thing that Magus has no way to make it so that their Spell Strike hits several targets at once, at a feat that they can get immediately after the Psychic archetype gives them Imaginary Weapon. It's a good thing that is not a thing they have and isn't titled Spell Swipe, which lets you attack an arc and enact your spell against everyone you hit.
And, I mean, with the right feat combinations, you can Lightning Bolt, you can Fireball, you can AoE strike a whole bunch of people with lots of powerful spells. What is missed in this analysis of this particular spell is how the Magus class works. So, okay, you've got your Spell Strike loaded up, you cast Spell Swipe, you AoE with the Focus Point spent cantrip to maximize the damage. Now, again, even not spending the Focus Point, you're going to do more damage with those 2 hits than a lot of other cantrips that you can just keep repeating. But the problem with the Magus is you need an action to reload your Spell Strike. So when you're using Spell Swipe, which is a 3-action ability, you are only Spell Striking every other turn. Or at the very least, you only get to do this big AoE burst one time because you spend 1 action reloading it and then 2 actions doing your next Spell Strike. And now you're just stuck in that cycle if you want to keep Spell Striking as a Magus. Heaven forbid you have to move, deal with getting rid of a debuff like you got knocked prone, so now you have to stand up. Again, yes, these are strong, but the action economy constrains so many of these things because it doesn't matter how many feats you have access to. The action economy restrains you to only being able to take 3 actions per turn.
Which lets you make a Spell Strike, but roll separate strikes to attack 2 creatures, each of whom must be within your melee reach. And you have so many feats.
All right, we're going to jump over here.
If you have too many activated abilities, they start to compete with each other. Because, like, if you have 10 ways to spend an action, you're still only able to pick 3 of them per turn.
So this is what I was just talking about.
But there are some archetypes that have a lot of power budget in passive abilities, in reactions, and other things that are just kind of on your sheet and just exist there, not really requiring your character's action economy.
Reactions absolutely take your action economy. You get 1 per turn.
That's one of the things that makes Champion archetype so good. It's a lot of passives. And in a free archetype game, you already have a lot of actives from your class or whatever. And then you can get more actives from an archetype and you can be overloaded with things and not be able to use all of them. So in a free archetype game, you should just be grabbing every passive you see, even if you think it's not that great, because eventually you will find ways to burn your actions anyway. There will be feats that are just so good you're taking them and you're using them often, and all your passives are just kind of there, always giving value. So now you're able to use more feats per fight.
I mean, okay, so you get a little bit more oomph from passives. Most passive things are like skill boosts and increase, and maybe I don't even know of that many that give you just like a straight bonus. So I don't really get, I guess, what the passive argument is here. Like, I guess the one on the screen here, the Contortionist, you can squeeze surprisingly quickly, gaining an advantage against foes trying to pin you down. You gain Quick Squeeze skill feat, and you're a master. And if you're a master in acrobatics, you can squeeze at full speed. So I guess that's the passive. If you squeeze, you can squeeze at full speed. Okay, I don't feel like that's breaking anything unless you're in some sort of tunnel rat game in the Underdark and you're constantly squeezing through tunnels. That could be pretty powerful.
That's just a suggestion I have. You're probably not evaluating passives strongly enough in a free archetype game.
I suppose I'm not. I just don't think it's that big of a deal. Like, Ultimately, I have a game I'm running where the players picked up a NPC to be their buddy. It was a goblin they attempted to drown, but they critically failed. So I made it seem like they were trying to save the goblin, and it scurried up on top of them. And it was so happy that it saved them from drowning that it became their little friend. It is 2 levels behind the party, and it doesn't have a free archetype. It hangs with the party. It does just fine in fights. It is still the best in a couple skills because they didn't have a rogue in the party, and it's 2 levels behind and doesn't have an archetype, and it works just fine. The level disparity and power disparity and having more feats is not that great. I mean, even it's obviously at a -2 to everyone else in the party just from the level difference, but it still hits. It still is providing flanks. It's still doing its rogue stuff, and it helps the party out.
So, getting this legendary in acrobatics or these legendary in skills automatically, Dandy does very similar stuff with how it can bring a bunch of skills up like a proficiency tier. Both of these kind of do the similar thing, and these are considered more fair archetypes. They still increase skills and give passives and stuff that very much helps you.
I mean, that is the point of having skills and feats. They help you. So, of course, free archetype giving you an extra choice every 2 levels is going to give you more of these things.
And a lot of people actually take acrobat later in a character's career after they finish something like psychic or champion, get everything they really want, then splash to acrobat just for this dedication. And just to get another legendary skill.
Sure, that's a very power gaming move. If that's the type of table you like to enjoy and play at, then do this and enjoy it. If you're playing at a table that really cares about story and what's happening, they're going to pick archetypes that make sense for their character. They're going to dip into things that they've encountered along their journey that changes how they conduct themselves in the world.
Free. Dandy, I already mentioned that it gives more skills. It can give a recall knowledge on any topic skill, and then it just has a bunch of interesting skill feat passives that can really take over a game out of combat. Because I really want to put.
So before he makes this point, the vast majority of skill feats beyond first and like third level require an archetype. Like the amount of skill feats that exist without requiring a dedication are very, very small, very, very niche, and in my opinion, very, very boring. If you're not playing with free archetype, you're missing, I don't know, probably 50% of the skill feats. I should probably look that up before jumping on a number like that, but the amount of skill. Hello from the editor's desk again. All right, so we have 141 feats past level 3. When we do archetype only, we have 72. Dang, that was accurate. But the amount of skill feats that don't require an archetype are very, very small.
Put emphasis on Party Crasher, which does require Master in Society, but it just says if there's an event that you know about and it has an attendance list, you just take 1d4 hours and no check, you get tickets for the party. Period.
Great. If you have a dandy in your party, just know them figuring out how to get into said party isn't going to be part of what you need to prep as a GM. You can build something entirely different around this. And here's the other thing. How soon did they find out about the party? Is it like happening in an hour, so they're not going to be able to get in until it's already started? Is it the next day, so they can just handle this? Do they have other things going on in town to where that 1d4 hours could be a problem, force the party to split up, create other things? And just because 1d4 hours secures them the entry doesn't mean you as the game master can't still put obstacles, interesting characters, and things in front of them through that 1d4 hour process. Yes, it could be an easy just we can skip this part of the storytelling, or you can go into what happens in those 1d4 hours to secure them access to the party. You just maybe don't have to make some skill rolls for it. It's a much more narrative approach to secure something.
You might need to work as like cooks and pretend to be something for a little bit, but you're in. And this is just like a skill feat that you can pick up once you have this archetype.
I guess I need to correct that. There's no reason you couldn't still take archetypes in the normal play in place of a class feat to gain access to some skill feats, but that's a lot of hoops to jump through and a lot of character development and building to sacrifice to get access to those skill feats, which I find skill feats are probably the most blasé of anything in Pathfinder, with a few exceptions.
And then you're just, boom, you get the things up the proficiency tiers, maybe take just like a Gossip Lord to fill up the slot, and you can get out of this archetype pretty quickly because of the amount of skill feats involved in it. You can really flicker between a lot of archetypes and take a lot of abilities that are pretty overtuned. Medic is kind of the king of doing this.
So I disagree that you can just bounce around. It's what you have to take another dedication feat until you gain 2 feats. So that's every 3 levels you can get another dedication, and it's every other level. So you can get one. You have to spend 2, 4, and 6 in your current dedication, and then you can grab something else at 8, and 10 and 12 have to be in that dedication. Then 14, you can pick up a third one. Like, it's not like you're changing these out every level.
Where it gives you the increase in a skill for battle medicine, lets you heal more with battle medicine, and then gives you a way to cheat on actions to battle medicine, so you have more rooms to use more of your cool abilities that you got from free archetype.
Oh no, you can do cool things. Like, I think that's the entire point of playing TTRPGs. Now, I have a Alchemist Kyurgeon that has the medic dedication in the game I'm playing in. Doctor's Visitation is by far one of the best feats in the game if you are doing battle medicine. But you also have to remember, battle medicine is, highly restricted. With a few feats and a special build, you can do twice per day on your party members. So yeah, you can move around and you're maximizing your action economy, but you can't endlessly heal this way. You're constantly restricted by the amount of what you can put into your friend's healing. The other thing, you have to be adjacent to them. Are you moving into the front line to then do combat medicine? Are you incurring attacks of opportunity? How are you getting out of danger? Because maybe if you're going the medic dedication, I assume you're a little more healing focused. You're probably not a frontline fighter because your job's going to be, putting the hurt on people. So does this let you get in and get out of combat and be a little bit more tactical and have more options? Absolutely. It makes being, quite honestly, I built a completely non-magical healer for the party. We have a bard that sometimes can help out in a pinch, but without Doctor's Visitation, I highly question if that build would be functional, and it's been a blast to play. So I don't feel it's overpowered. I'm keeping a party alive. We still have people go down, but yeah, it makes it very interesting. This is a great and enjoyable feat. The other thing, if you're mixing it with other classes, it's a flourish, so you can't do multiple flourishes. So it does have plenty of restrictions built into it.
From there, you take another skill feat at the level 4 from either Holistic Care or Treat Condition, and then you get out. Or, well, I guess you have to take Treat Condition first, but like, you can then get whatever skill feats you want from this. You just get the Treat Condition, you meet the requirements, and you then go splash directly into something like Acrobat.
Oh, I guess that's true. I didn't consider taking skill feats for getting out of a dedication. That could be a quicker way to bounce out of them.
You just kind of bounce between a bunch of different archetypes, getting a bunch of random skills along the way that are all passive benefits, while having action compression abilities from each archetype. That is a ridiculously powerful thing to do.
If there's a lot of things that compress the action economy, that is where things start to break down, but they're pretty far and few between.
Versatility is a form of power in this system. So
I disagree that versatility is power. The lack of options makes you less powerful, I suppose. If you just have no solution to the problem in front of you, the problem in front of you will be inherently more powerful. That being said, you having more tools in your toolbox requires you still to use them in the correct order, to play well, to synergize with your teammates, and really get to the core of what Pathfinder is supposed to be about.
When you are thinking about if you want to include free archetype in your game, it will make more powerful characters if your players are seeking to abuse it. And believe me, if I'm a player in your game, I am abusing it.
And quite frankly, I don't generally like those kind of tables, but that's just me. I've definitely been at a power game table, and I have power gamed a couple characters. It just is so much less interesting in the long run to me. But even so, all of these things mentioned aren't game breaking. I'm not going to have to tailor or change my tables and counters because one player is acting like this. Heck, even if all four are acting like it, maybe I just treat them like there's one extra party member in there. Like it's not that hard to tune up an adventure to make it more difficult. My current game, my party is completely overpowered in equipment because they're playing in a world where dragon hordes are getting raided constantly, and they just have way too many magic items that are way too high level in power, and I can definitely see that power disparity between my more normal aligned equipment game. But you know, the way Pathfinder's encounter building works and the way their monsters work, it's so easy to just drop to treat the party as if it's got two extra people in it because of the equipment, although I'm finding it's more like three extra people at this point. And you just drop in the monsters that meet the formula to hit that difficulty level. It works out really easy. It's not that hard to adjust as a GM. And yeah, I just don't think it's a factor.
Period. Because wrestler abuses it, and this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna play a wrestler. It's how it's be.
I have a wrestler in a game. Like, it's fine. Nothing about it seems extraordinary or amazing to me in playing against it. Against is the wrong term, but pitting monsters against it. Like, I don't think like, oh no, the wrestler's going to do such terrible things in this encounter, and it's so overpowered.
So, I actually want to talk about wrestler now, because wrestler dedication does everything I was mentioning could be problematic. It's a laundry list of passives. It gives you extra skill feats, gives you extra skill trainings, gives you random ways that you can have lethal strikes, and then you get a bonus to fortitude DC against several things, which is really good.
Grappling, somewhat frequent. Swallow whole, like there's a very small list of monsters that do that. Expert in athletics, okay, your background gives you an expert in something, like, or a boost in trained in something. Those aren't huge. And yes, you can now make lethal attacks with non-lethal weapons. Also easily solved for a bare fist fighter by spending like 2 silver on some brass knuckles. Not impressive.
It gives you access to something like combat grab, so that you can just get the grabbed condition off more often as a grappler, target different defenses.
This isn't special to this class. Like, this is a fighter feat. It's just, if it just gives you more options. Again, like, build a fighter, go wrestler, take combat grab here so you can grab another fighter feat. Yes, that does get a little stronger, but again, it's just options because you're constantly restricted by the action economy.
Really, really strong. And then you can take whatever from the other feats. Suplex is one of my favorites because it's another way to apply prone. So now you can ignore reflex and fortitude if you want and still get the prone grapple locks going, which is hilarious. And then you can get like whirling throw and start splashing into a bunch of other archetypes if you so wished, or keep on taking random wrestler feats.
Okay, so you can get into a rotation of knocking something prone. If this is a single monster big bad guy, that's probably not happening super frequently, and if it does, it'll be super epic for your wrestlers. If you're tearing through mooks, okay, so you've locked a mook down. Great. It's not. I don't see it as anything extraordinary.
And whirling throw and suplex in the crowd, they fall under a category of things I like to call situational actions. You don't really want to use suplex right after you grab somebody because then you have multi-attack penalty. It's for if they choose not to escape your grapple, you then get to do the suplex because you'd release them at the end of that turn anyway. And situational abilities are also much stronger in free archetype scenarios because you have more actives, so you should be investing more into things that are only good in specific scenarios because you'll have the normal scenarios basically covered.
Oh no, you have more things you can do instead of just attacking with your best feat. I'm confused.
Because in a normal scenario, you're just going to be, you know, spamming out your combat grabs, spamming out like a basic strike, whatever your main class is doing. And then if the time comes where one of these feats is incredible, you then have it. And so
sounds like a lot of fun.
Instead of being constantly good, you're now good with an occasional spike of excellent, which is stronger. So versatility is a form of power. Having access to more abilities will make characters directly stronger if they're picking abilities that do things. And if you're going to restrict characters to abilities that don't matter, why would you do it?
It's a strange argument to me overall. Like, I'm concerned that you're going to have more fun because you're going to be able to do cool things, and that might make your character too strong. It's just a bizarre argument to me. Yeah, I guess that when that comes up and your character can do the suplex, are you going to hit harder and do an extra debuff that wouldn't have been available without free archetype? Yeah. Is it going to imbalance your game or drastically change anything or be like, man, this is a serious problem for how this game works? No, not at all. Again, it's what do you want to do at your table? Do you want to have more options? Do you want to be able to have more niche instances? Or do you want to do the same 3 things every round?
And now, I want to add the disclaimer for my massive disclaimer before. Free archetype is still fun. It lets you explore more character concepts than you would normally see in an average game of Pathfinder 2e.
100% agree.
However, I do think that needs to be stated that if your players are looking to abuse it, it will be a lot of extra power budget.
I disagree. It's a lot of extra power budget. It's a some power budget. And if someone really fine-tunes their character, okay, they'll be a little stronger. I don't know if there's any way to quantify it, but I would guess 10 to 15% at best if someone really wringed everything out of their character.
But that being said, I think there are a lot of archetypes that just kind of don't do that much and are really kind of flavory.
I think the vast majority of them are flavor. I mean, quite frankly, I go through and just read archetype titles because there's too many to know them all. And if it sounds like it's something that synergizes with my character concept, then I go see if it'll be interesting to play.
Because if you look at something like, I don't know, I'm just going to scroll through. I remember that Herbalist was a good example. Herbalist would just kind of let you use various things to make antidotes, anti-plagues, various healing items.
See, here's one I disagree with. I think this one has a lot of interesting options to it. If you're playing like a druid or a ranger or a very nature-based character already, you're going to get to use nature in place of a lot of your healing options, and you're basically going to get to be like an alchemist that gets to use nature stuff to create these special things. I feel this one could be really strong, actually, with the right character concept and build. But again, this is all also focused around building a story and a reason behind the character.
And yeah, it makes you get this extra skill proficiency, but its feats don't actually do that much in terms of giving characters extra power. Linguist is another one. There are dedications and archetypes that are...
Yeah, I agree Linguist is a super flavored one, and if it's right for your table, where you use a lot of different languages and that's a factor, Linguist could be kind of neat, but it's also kind of a throwaway, I think, for a table that isn't utilizing those things.
Really flavorful, but don't give a lot of power fantasy romp, then this, and then let them build more versatile, interesting characters.
Sorry, skipping around again.
Otherwise, I'd heavily curate and restrict a free archetype list if I'm just running a generic game.
So this is what's weird to me. I've played with free archetype, without free archetype. I don't feel a massive power difference. I don't feel things are all that different. Like when I played in Galarian doing some stuff at PaizoCon without free archetype, it was the same game, right? Like nothing felt incredibly different to me in power level or what the fantasy was like or anything of that nature. This really just needs to be what's important to your table. I'm going to jump to his second video. All right, this was basically a response to a lot of the comments he got. Clearly, he got a lot of them. That's great. Engaging videos and conversation in the community, I think, is awesome.
The but new players argument. And the argument basically said that newer players will not make the super hyper min-max decision, so free archetype will not be a balance issue for new players.
they'll look up guides. If someone wants to be a min-max player and they did it in other games, they'll definitely do it here. If they're brand new to tabletop RPGs, maybe free archetype will be a little overwhelming. I've definitely had a player just look at it and be like, I have no idea what to choose. There's so much. But again, going back to the game where I have the goblin that's 2 levels lower and no archetype, you don't have to take it. If your table has free archetype and you don't want to use it, just don't until you decide, or you have a character reason, or you found something that's cool, or something that you want to do. My alchemist, once I hit the things I wanted in medic dedication, nothing else made sense for the character or what I wanted to do, so I didn't have I was not filling archetype slots for a couple levels. Everything worked fine. Just because it's there doesn't mean you have to spend it.
And, well, there is some truth to that. A new player without any guidance will usually not gravitate to these super powerful options. But there are a bunch of other issues with that. First, what if a new player does gravitate towards one of those really, really ridiculous powerful options?
I disagree that anything is ridiculously and powerful options that were explained. They're good. They're perhaps best in class. They're not that.
But the rest of the group...
Okay, it's not that cool. Thematically, I actually really dislike the psychic class. They're not cool. But their stats are powerful.
Simply doesn't. And then you have one character who has a power budget that is far exceeding the rest of the party. Some groups may not like that very much, and that's an issue. Other groups and other players may have the issue of, well, as a new player to Pathfinder, do you know how many archetypes there are and how much stuff there is to just read on Archives and Nethys?
Yeah, there's a lot, but don't read it all.
If you implement free archetype into a game, you're making it so that every single one of your players needs to take an archetype.
They do not. 100% you can play without an archetype with a party that has archetypes and it'll be fine.
And that means all of them will need to read so many things to just build a character.
Not true, but it can be overwhelming. I will say this is very much like the bookstore. You don't read every page, and at the back of every book when you're picking out a book in the bookstore, you read the name of the book and maybe look at the cover art and decide if you're more interested enough to read what's next inside the fold of the book or the little synopsis, right? So scroll through the list, look at the names of all the archetypes, maybe mouse over them to read the first couple lines if they interest you a little bit more, and then go down the path. You absolutely do not have to read every archetype. All right, we'll skip ahead here.
More versatility, like Dandy. This is something the comments didn't really understand by me pointing at feats like Party Crasher as very strong. And
it's not that strong. It just eliminates one aspect of what you have to do in your storytelling as a GM. If someone has it, just be aware of it. And just because they're successful in 1d4 hours doesn't mean you still can't put obstacles or other interesting things in front of them during that 1d4 hour.
The reasoning behind me valuing things like Party Crasher that highly is that they're passives. They just come up when you need it to. And yeah.
How many parties do you actually need to crash? All right, we're jumping to the next one. Overpowered archetypes.
There are high power level archetypes that I think are equivalent to or slightly above the power of normal class feats. And if you're doubling the amount of a resource of any character in this game, it is going to be powerful for them. If you had the option of playing a fighter and taking twice as many feats, that is clearly stronger.
You're not wrong here. A lot of my builds for like my fighter video combines an archetype that maximizes the type of fighter you were building. And the best part about it was getting access to more feats that augment the thing you want to be doing. But again, most of those things are still restricted by only 3 actions. Just because you have more tools in your tool belt doesn't mean your tool belt's, full of power tools necessarily. And I think being able to respond to situations and have something more epic and cool to do than just I swing my sword again is one of the great appeals of Pathfinder. Also, just from a pure character building standpoint, when I've played 5e, which hasn't been much, mind you, I've built level 15 and 16 characters that I felt were less interesting than a level 1, well, I guess a level 2 character with an archetype choice in Pathfinder.
And if you can translate those archetype feats into raw power with those dedications that I showed in the previous video, plus Beastmaster, because I simply forgot to mention it, you will have more powerful characters. And it won't be more powerful in the sense of the numbers are bigger, because the math is very well contained. They'll be more powerful from the fact that they just have more abilities, more ways to deal with every given scenario. A well-built free archetype character is like half a level stronger than a normal character.
Yeah, I disagree with that. I don't think they're half a level stronger. I also, yeah, I don't see why it's a problem having solutions to problems. It seems like the entire point of playing the game is to find solutions, and if the physics of your world, which are the rules of the game, give you ways to solve the problems, that just seems like working as intended and a lot of fun.
And then people would say, but Player Core 2 is going to come out and fix the champion archetype, which I highly doubt.
I don't even know what needs fixing about it. So what, you can do the champion reaction. Again, if you're a champion, why are you in loyalty and fealty in working with this deity? What impact does that have on your choices and your character? What happens if you do something that's out of ethos and now you lose your archetype abilities, right? Like, yeah, I'm going to skip the errata one. I don't think there's really anything that needs terrible fixing in it.
I'm going to acknowledge the final argument. But I just want to play my high power, wackier game. And that is perfectly fine. And free archetype can help you do that.
I do agree free archetype can make things wacky, but again, like I said earlier, that's one of my favorite things about Pathfinder 1st Edition was all the crazy archetypes and things you could choose.
However, I don't think it's the best thing at doing that. Because dual class exists, ancestral paragon exists, there are other variant rules that are cool, that can make exciting characters.
You should use all those too. I think my next game I'm actually going to do Ancestral Paragon and Free Archetype, because more choices is fun.
Because one of my big issues with Free Archetype in the previous video was it takes away decision making. Well, with dual class, you still have things that are competing for every slot, because you can choose to, if you are a fighter champion, you're still choosing, am I giving up a fighter feat or a champion feat to actually pick up the wrestler dedication? What am I giving up in order to gain my archetype to better build this character? And you are then combining classes together so you can have a more interesting class fantasy. Because like the idea of a thaumaturge rogue that is doing the sneak attack and all of their recall knowledge stuff along with the masterminds stuff is a cool character. And things like that are very doable in dual class and could be very unique. And I
find dual class a little less interesting because you only really get the class features and there's less choices involved with that.
I just don't think free archetype should be the default way people play higher power games. Because I
disagree again at the premise it's higher power, but as a default, it certainly gives you the most options and the most versatility, which if his premise is versatility is power, then it's the best way to get to a high power game.
There are other ways to do that that lead to more interesting builds, more interesting gameplay. And I admit that free archetype is still really good for a lot of tables.
100%. And if your table, and if it's not good for your table, just don't use it, right? It's a variant rule for a reason. I think it is a better experience overall in Pathfinder, but your mileage may vary.
It's a popular variant rule for a reason. Because I see a lot of sentiment online that if you're not playing free archetype, you're not playing real Pathfinder.
I mean, I've jokingly said things like this. That's not true, but I think free archetype captures the initial feeling of original Pathfinder better than any other variant rule in the game. And coming from Pathfinder 1, free archetype makes me feel a lot more at home.
And I think that's honestly kind of nonsense. Any amount of Pathfinder 2 with or without variant rules is still this game. And this game is great. And I think that you shouldn't get lost in I love my one variant rule and this is my one way to play it, I think you should look outside that box and look at the other styles of play, at least so you can look at them and analyze them and think, huh, that is interesting. I don't really want to do it.
100% agree with this. This is a great point. And we're gonna wrap the video here. So there you have it, my reaction to Swingripper's video. I just think a power gaming approach to everything leaves so much on the table. The choices that your character make should be part of your storytelling. The rules are the physics that bind the world together. Use them to help tell the story you're trying to tell. Play the variant rules you like to play. Play the tabletop role-playing games you want to play the way you want to play them. It's all about having fun, and as long as your table is enjoying what's happening, then keep doing that. I don't like adventure paths. I don't like pre-made stories. I don't like, what else do I not like? I don't like the rune system in Pathfinder, so I use automatic bonus progression, or at least automatic rune progression. That's a variant I like because it just felt weird to me that you had to get a striking rune and the damaging rune, and if you just didn't get that, you were going to fall behind in the math. So if that was just a given, why not just hand it out to the players? And then with that variant rule, the world feels much more like you're just getting better at using your weapon, so that +1 and plus damage die are as you gain experience, because it just naturally happens as you become better at using your stuff. So that variant rule just made the world feel more alive and realistic to me, which I appreciate in my tabletop games. So yeah, there you go. If you like this reaction content, I do enjoy talking about things going around in the tabletop community. Please, if you didn't see the whole video or both of them, they're going to be linked in my channel or in my description below. Go check out Swingripper. He's got some great content. If you like what we're doing here, would always appreciate the like and the subscribe. And I'm going to wish you guys a fantastic adventure on your 20-side adventures. We'll see you next time.